Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. So welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast with myself, David Chambers, as you know from the intro, if you listen to that. I'm a men's coach, I'm a sex educator, and I'm a man who guides men to deeper connection, both sexually and relationally as well, in their dating lives, with their partners, with the women and men that they meet. I'm all about deeper connection because I believe that a lot of the issues that men face in life, whether they mental health issues, whether they be loneliness, whether they just feel, not getting place in their career, and their life in general, comes down to a lack of connection with themselves, with their desires, their wants, their needs, their goals, and also a lack of connection with the people they meet in their life, and those loved ones that are around them. So, that's the work that I do, which I love really doing as well. So, and this episode, is going to be all around the dating piece. So I don't talk about dating as much as I used to. Obviously, the podcast used to be called Authentic Dating Series, now no longer. So I'm going to talk about something that a listener asked me about recently, and I thought was a really good topic, which is around this whole kind of push-pull that we do in dating, right? That often happens, and I know men get labelled with doing this a lot, but I know it's not only men that do this, is where you're seeing someone and then you want to spend time with them, and then you get, you back off, and then you back on, and then you back off, and then you back on. That kind of like energetic push-pull, hot and cold. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've experienced it. If you've been doing it or you've been experiencing it. I've been on both ends. So I think that gives me a unique point of view. So yeah, we're going to get into that. But just before we get into that, I'm just going to get some, the AOB, any other business at the beginning. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is, if you've been listening to the podcast and you really enjoy it, please just subscribe, actually. And then secondly, I'm not saying just subscribe and give a review and type out a review. Tell me what you've learned from listening to the podcast, what you've taken from it, because it helps me shape episodes going forward. You can pop that in the, if this is Apple, you're listening, you can just pop that in there and just say, yeah, I learned so many amazing things from listening to David talk shit all the time. You can say that'd be great as well. But if not, pop me a message on Instagram at @theauthenticman_ and tell me what you thought, tell me what you learned, tell me what you'd like to hear more of as well. I'm always up for listening to that. Because, it's great to get topics from you guys and girls, because it means that I'm, if it's something that you're dealing with, other people are probably dealing with it too. Right. So that's the first AOB. Second AOB is workshops and events. So I've got a lot of workshops and events coming up. One of them's coming up this coming Friday. And if you listen to this late, then it's not this coming Friday, obviously, the 13th of August, which is an event called, Confident Woman version 1. I'm running that with, I'm not running it. Merv's running it. Merv from You at Yours. We did a podcast episode around body confidence. Go back and listen to that because Merv's amazing. He's done most of my photography as well. If you look on my Instagram, you see most of the photography of me is by him. He's doing a workshop / social, which is going to be all about confidence and different areas of confidence. Me and also are going to be talking about, unleashing that feminine energy. It's a women's event. and how we can be more confident in our bodies, confident sexually. We're going to be talking about that together, which is interesting. I think it's the first time we've like spoken together as two human beings, as a couple type thing. And then the next event I've got coming up is around being authentically attractive. Now, this embodies a lot of the stuff I talk about in this workshop. I go through, I think it's like 15 ways that we can be more authentic, and it's be more authentic, not doing authenticity, it's being. And that's on the 18th of August. That's recorded. Like all my events that I run solo, especially, they're all recorded. So if you can't make the date or the time, then you can still purchase a ticket and then you can watch the rerun, which is great, right? So then I've got one about foreplay, which is on the 25th of August. I've got a lot of interest in this one, actually. It's a really good workshop. I talk about, some of the things that men can learn. And this is a men-only event that men can learn about foreplay. And then I've got a bunch of workshops around Tantra with Orsa as well that are coming up, as well as one about mindful masturbation for men, which I'm really looking forward to. That's on the 1st of September. That's all about how men can turn their masturbation into a meditation, turn into something that nourishes them instead of depletes them all the time, or causes a guilt and anxiety, which happens a lot for a lot of men, right? Around wanking and masturbation. Like we wank, we come, and then we feel bad, we feel guilty, we feel shitty about ourselves. Now I've just created this whole system myself where you leave feeling energized and revitalized, and you feel good about yourself. You feel like you brought good energy into your body. You feel peaceful afterwards as well, right? So that's something I've got as well coming up as well as I've got a couple of events around sexual performance. I'm going to be running my 3-week sexual performance course with another lovely group of men. I'm keeping it to no more than a group of 8, and I already have 4 people signed up. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. That's going to be happening kind of mid to late September, most likely, and it runs for 3 weeks. If you contact me again on Instagram, you'll get all the details for that. So we're going to get into the episode, right? And ultimately, this whole kind of push-pull, hot-cold thing, what does it look like? I guess let's talk about what it looks like, right? Let's talk about what it looks like from the side of the person on the receiving end of the hot-cold, right? What it looks like sometimes is someone who will kind of burst of, maybe early on, they're really keen, you get lots of messages, they seem really like, open-hearted even, like open with their time and their energy, and then they back off. The messaging slows down, you don't hear from them much, and you're left kind of like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Why are they not interested? They were suddenly really interested. And then maybe they'll come back again in, could anything be from days to weeks to months to even years later, and kind of be all hot again, right? And then sometimes this is a cycle of just like hot and cold, on and off, push, pull, right? That can be super frustrating, right? And I know that from both sides. Now, as the person doing the hot and cold, the push and pull, this can show up as like, oh my God, I'm super keen on someone. And then you're like, oh, actually, I'm busy now. I've got loads of other things going on. Or, oh, actually, things feel cool. I don't need to be as keen. They're kind of quote unquote in the bag, which is a terrible phrase, right? You don't need to make as much effort, again, quote unquote, anymore, because it's kind of, you've won them over or anything like that. If there's any kind of mindset thinking you've got like that, then you're in these cycles of kind of push pull, especially if when they go distant, you're suddenly like, oh, I don't know if they're interested anymore. And then suddenly you rekindle interest because you're not sure if they're interested in you, right? And that can happen on a conscious or quite a subconscious level. Or, that feeling like you're lying on your phone, lying in bed, and no one's messaging you anymore because for whatever reason you've done this hot cold thing to a lot of people and they're not bothered. So then you go and message a bunch of women or message a bunch of men, and then you rekindle interest, right? It kind of looks like that. So if that's you're in this kind of hot and cold thing. I don't know, there's probably a technical term. If you're listening to this and there's some sort of technical dating term, let me know. I'm not really down with all these technical dating terms. I just like to say for what they are because, it is what it is when it happens to you, right? I don't need someone's term for it to make it a real thing and something that people experience. So the question is why? Why does this happen? Why do people do this? And I'm going to say, like, I've got multiple levels actually on this, because I used to do this a lot, right? I used to do this a lot with women, especially in my kind of mid to late 20s. Was I even guilty of it a little bit, maybe a few years ago, maybe a little bit here and there. Definitely I can think of once or twice, which I'll probably go into. But it really messes around with both people on both ends, actually, both ends. So why? The first one is validation. One of the first reasons is definitely validation. Do people do it for validation? Yes. So this is a scenario where, as I described earlier, where it's like, no one's messaging me at the moment. No one's calling me. No one's interested in me, right? If you're the person who does the hot and cold, and then you just blast off a couple of messages to a few women or men that you know, right? And then maybe you get busy with your life or busy with one person, right? Dating one person. And then you go cold on all those people, and then you do it again, right? And that is, you are the person doing the hot cold thing. And actually what you're doing it for is to feel like people give a shit about you. Or put a different way, to feel like you're liked, you're cared for, and you're loved, and you need that attention. So that is when you're seeking attention outside of yourself, validation from other people, wanting, liking, messaging you, sending you emojis, sending you, asking for pictures, whatever it is. And this is a sign of self-worth that needs some work if you're doing this, right? And again, I did this, and I definitely say it's a sign of self-worth, or just spotting that that's what I was up to. Another thing that this hot and cold thing comes up is around, and this one is quite brutally honest, it's like when someone doesn't want anything serious. It's definitely from my side, there were times I did this in my life with women I was dating, when it was like, I like you, you're cool, but either one of two things. I'm not in a place where I want anything serious, right? Which was a lot of my life, to be honest, right? Or I don't want anything serious with you. That's, just be really straight about it, right? If you're listening, you're hearing this, and it's, sometimes I wasn't sure. There were times where it was both of those things, and I wasn't sure which one it was, right? And part of that figuring out was being a bit hot and cold, because I was trying to figure that out. I was like, am I really ready for something? Are you the right person to be with? Oh, I'm not sure if you're the right person. Oh, actually, I think you are. Oh, no, you said something. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be with someone who does and says things like that. There's also that conversation that's going on for the person doing the hot and cold, because they're just unsure. There's an indecisiveness that's there, right? That's like at play. There's also like a lack of management of life, just being consistent. The lack of that, a lack of ability to be consistent. But we're going to talk about the remedies later on. But that's one of them, being consistent in your energy with people. And this one here, this next point actually, is around playing it too cool. This is something that I did a lot, where it was like, I didn't want to be too keen. I don't want to be too keen, because if I'm too keen, she's not going to like me. Because every man, and I speak from a man's point of view, right, because I'm a man, has had that experience where you liked a girl, you were really keen, and she was like, I just want to be friends. Or, I'm not really that interested in you. And then you're like, oh man, it's because I was too keen, I was too eager, so I'm not going to do that keen, eager thing again. And there is some truth in that, when you are overly keen, where it's like what they call it, love bombing, right? Where you're just like all the energy at someone. It can be off-putting, especially in the early stages, if it's not met and it's not kind of what's coming from them as well. And I can always remember the time that this probably hurt me the most was, and you might have heard me tell this story before, but I tell it in workshops, is where I'd met someone in Bali who I really liked. We got on, we had a really beautiful connection in Bali. And then I came home, she kept traveling. And what I did was that, she was traveling, and I just left her to travel. I didn't really message her. I didn't really follow up with her and try and meet up with her. She came to London to visit me, but after that I was very much like, oh, she's busy, I'll leave her do her thing, I'm going to be in London doing my thing. Like, that's cool. When I say doing my thing, I was just like, I'm just living, right? And things just fizzled out. And I remember being at one point realizing that things are fizzling out and being like, oh, let me, rekindle, let me make more effort. And she was really straight to me. She was just like, oh yeah, like, I just felt like you weren't interested, and that's not the David that I wanted. And I remember being like, fuck, that hit me quite hard actually. Because I thought that I'd got past this pattern of this hot and cold. And for me, a lot of it was around like not wanting to be too keen, but there's also a part of me inside of there that was like, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to get hurt. There's still this fear of being hurt by someone that was sitting there for me. It's like, oh, if I really like someone, they don't like me back, or if that sort of thing. So I think that's something that was definitely there for me. And inside of realizing that, oh, the thing I was trying to avoid was getting hurt, and then what did I do? I was too cold. I was too cool. And what did that cause? Me getting hurt. And this is a cycle that happens for a lot of us, right? Is that inside of trying to avoid this thing that we don't want to happen, right? We become so focused on this thing not happening that we actually create that thing to happen anyway. It's like, say for instance, you're like, okay, I'm never going to let a man cheat on me. But you spend all your time thinking about this cheating. And how many times does it just come round and happen, right? Because we become so fixated on the thing we don't want to happen. And if you're ever interested about this, I know there's an episode I did a while ago with William Whitecloud around overthinking. And I can't remember exactly what episode it is, but if you search my podcast with overthinking, it's probably the only one that will come up, where he talks a lot about focus and how your focus creates your reality. And that's a really important point, because it is a case of how we do what we focus on, we create into our reality. And it's a big part of my coaching actually, is like being like, where is your focus? What are you actually focusing on? Because often we think, oh, I'm focusing on everything being good and happy, but actually we're putting loads of energy into avoiding the bad thing that's happening, or that we don't want to happen, and then it ends up happening to us anyway. So inside of that, it's playing too cool. And then another reason why, men and women do this whole hot and cold thing, because I just want to say that it's not just men that do this. I think men get a bad rap for doing this, because they do it. I did it. I was a man. I know other men that did it. But I also have experienced it from women as well. Definitely. I think one of the times it was really reflected back to me was by a woman actually. And for her actually, and she, the pain and hurt that she caused me was actually one of the biggest gifts of my life, if I'm honest, because it really taught me that I could give all of my heart and love somebody and have my heart broken, and I would be okay, and I could survive that. Because I think a lot of men, and I speak to men and for men, is we don't believe that we can deal with heartbreak, because at some point we had our heart broken and it hurt and it was hard. And usually in some younger period, in our early 20s or something, we gave all our heart to someone and they broke our heart, and we decide consciously or unconsciously, I'm never doing that again. Or even worse, I'm only going to do that again for the right woman. As if we can, the right woman's going to be signposted when we meet them. And I say this to men, but I know women do this as well, because, I've worked for enough human beings now, from a coaching perspective and from a friendship perspective, to know that we're all doing this. So the next point, right, is around the fear of intimacy, right? A lot of people, we fear intimacy. We fear being seen as we are deeply. We fear being seen, the core of us, what's underneath the flashy things, what's underneath the cars that we have, the nice houses, the nice restaurants we can take people to. We fear being seen, right? And I call this intimacy, because I think it's not just sexual intimacy, right? It's being seen as we are underneath all the facade of who we are. We fear that, right? We're so afraid that if you see who I am, you won't like it, or it won't be enough. It won't be good enough. It won't be interesting enough. It won't be as great as Bob over the road, or your ex-boyfriend, or your ex-girlfriend. So we're afraid of this being seen, of this intimacy. So it causes us to, any time that we start getting close to someone, we we start worrying. We're like, oh fuck, they're getting to know me. They're getting to see me. Oh shit, if they see me, they won't want me. Let me back off a bit. And then, they won't see me so clearly. Or I'll just show them the more kind of, superficial things. And then they like that stuff because that's the thing that's good about me. Do you see that one there? And that's where someone might not even be pulling or going hot and cold, like from an actual, say, messaging or like a tangible messaging conversation point of view, but energetically inside the messaging, inside of the contact, the push-pull is happening, the hot cold's happening. Maybe it's just a subtlety of the way, the things they want to talk about, or the things they avoid talking about as well, or the level of physical intimacy that they engage in as well, right? This can be a thing as well, this fear of intimacy. It's one of the reasons why. Another one can be like real serious trauma as well. And I say serious trauma, but all trauma is serious, basically. The more I read about trauma, the more I look into this, the more I realize that, a traumatic experience or multiple traumatic experiences can be like, from a young age, could be sexual abuse or rape on both sides of men and women. But it could also be multiple times having your heart broken. That can be a traumatic experience, having your heart broken multiple times would lead you to a fear of intimacy, would lead you to being afraid to having someone come close to you into who you are because of this worry and concern that if they get close to you, they're going to hurt you because that's what your experience has been, right? So it's really understandable why people do that. And I think sometimes we're really harsh with people. We're really like, oh my God, that guy, he's a fucking dickhead. He was hot and cold and then he did this and this. And we don't bring that compassion of like, oh shit, they must be fucking struggling. They know not what they do, or they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. It's not malicious. Like most people in dating, as much as most of the memes and all these good things that people love to follow and give a lot of airtime to, most people are not malicious in dating. They're just trying to protect their own fucking selves. Like, just sit with that for a bit. All the fucked up shit that you've done in dating, all the times you've been mean, all the times you've been weird, all the times you've been desperate, all the times you've been cold, it's because really just trying to protect yourself. And if we were to able to come at that point with people, we'd have a lot more compassion for each other. And I think we'd connect a lot better from a more loving place instead of this kind of hostility that often happens in dating. But my rant is now over. Another reason why people kind of go hot and cold is a fear of abandonment. That's a big one. I've come across a lot of men and women with this fear of abandonment. Often it's if you have a very anxious attachment style. You find yourself being really worried about being abandoned, being left. And this can actually cause you to be so concerned that you back off. And this was the experience I had with a woman where her whole thing was, her fear was about being abandoned. So she would be very hot and cold. She, like when I was with her, she'd just be like wanting to talk about everything and get as deep, like emotionally and physically and sexually as we could, like everything all in. And then maybe next day, like you wouldn't hear from her kind of thing. Because her whole fear was like, if she continues down that road, then at some point she'll get abandoned and will be hurt and won't be able to deal with that. So that's something that really happens for men and women. If you're really interested from a point of view of that kind of anxious attachment, fear of abandonment, there's an episode I did early on in this series with James, Ben, and Jamie, which is a really amazing episode. 4 of us talking about love and so forth. So it's a good one to check out if that's something you're interested in. And if you are interested in attachment styles, I haven't done an episode about attachment styles yet, but I will do soon. I know Vicky from the Love Project does some great work around attachment styles. Why do people do it? Why do people do this hot and cold? I've got loads, right? They're not sure. They're not sure what they want. They're not sure if they want you or not as a person. I kind of touched on this earlier. They're like, do I want to be with this person? I don't know. Do I? I don't know. Do I? I don't know. That's a really common one. And for a lot of people, that's the surface level conversation they're having. Do I want to be with this person? I don't know. And then it comes out in their actions. It comes out in how they're responding, their energy, how they're being with you. That's a big one. And that kind of leads into this other thing of this indecisiveness. right? Which is really, the indecisiveness is like a fear around their ability to make decisions. And this is something I really struggled with. And it's around, for me, it was around like choosing the wrong woman. Okay, I need to pick the quote unquote right woman. So, I'm dating a few women. How do I choose the right one? I don't know. So then you're all really hot and cold, because one moment you're like, this woman's amazing, I want to be with her. And then maybe 2 days later, you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure. She said something about, cheese, and I'm not that keen on cheese, whatever it might be. Or it could be she started talking about children, and it's like, fuck, that's a bit early for me. God, that's a bit much for me. I need to run away. This indecisiveness can happen. So it's just be mindful of that. And I think sometimes that comes up a lot, indecisiveness. Because I'm just looking back, I'm just literally like going back through my timeline. And a lot of it was indecisiveness. I didn't trust my ability to make a decision. I was obsessed with the right and wrong of things, We get schooled so much in right and wrong through school, and the red marker, the fucking dreaded red cross on your work, right? That there's always a right and wrong answer in any given moment, and we need to know what that is. And I think it's a very immature, masculine way to come at things. There's a right and wrong answer all the time, because it's very black and white. And in fact, that's very childish thinking, because actually, if we look at life on a grander plan, you don't know what's right or wrong for you. Like a few years ago, 3 years ago now, probably 3 years ago, when I had my heart broken, one of the times I had my heart broken, it's been a few times, I would have said that was, terrible, right? But actually, it's a blessing. I look at that as an absolute fucking blessing, right? Or I go back to, I was made redundant from a job 14 years ago, right? From my second job, after being there for a week or so because of funding issues. And at the time I was devastated. It was one of the best things that ever happened in my career, right? Because it released me into contracting and freelancing, which I did for many years. So when we get obsessed with this right and wrong, we get bogged down in the detail and the minutiae of the mire, what's happening right now, what's said, because we were unable to zoom out and go, okay, let's let life unfold a little bit. Let's just go with a decision. We try and keep all our options open, keep all our eggs in our basket instead of making a choice. And this sings through in our actions and makes us be very hot and cold with people, right? That's a big one. You have to sit with that one for a bit. Fear of judgment is another one, right? And this, again, it comes out in, maybe you're dating someone, and I'm going to be really straight with this one, actually. This is something that happened to me in my younger years. You're dating someone, you're like, I don't know if they're that attractive. I don't know if they're that hot. And there's that concern about what will other people think. That fear of judgment from other people. I had a conversation with another listener talking about this. Is often for men, especially, a lot of men really want this idea of quote unquote trophy wife, a wife or woman they're with that other men look at and go, man, your wife's hot or your woman's hot. And that's a validation thing in there, but there's also a judgment. They want to be judged well, and they don't want other men to look down on them and judge them for why is he with her? Or, I'm sure we've all had that where we've had our partner and other people have said something to you why is she with him? He's a bit overweight. Or why is he with her? She's a bit tall, or whatever, right? So it's this fear of judgment that comes in that stops us from, again, it messes with the way that we act with our energy with someone that we've met. And that's one that's definitely come up in my life before, in my past. Definitely see those times where I kind of got this whole thing as the girl I have to be with has to be really, really hot. Other people need to think that she's hot too. And it could take the smallest thing for me to be like, I don't think she's that attractive. And it could really, burrow into my mind and be all that you think about with someone, right? And like I said, it was a long time ago, and I was definitely a younger and more immature and less sure of myself man. And this is the sort of thing that a lot of men are wrestling with, right? This maturity, just maturing past this and realizing that what other people think, it doesn't fucking matter. And ultimately looks. And I think I'm going to do a separate episode on this around looks and youth being the biggest misguidance that we can look for in a partner, right? It's a really good part of the book, Where the Superior Man, by David Deida, and if you're a man, you need to read this book. It will change your fucking life. It's a great book. It's up there with one of probably my top 10 books, actually, Where's the Superior Man. And he talks about how there's part of the immature man will always chase this youthful, lustful woman. You know, we got a whole media that's obsessed with it, right? But in fact, the problem with that is as you're maturing as a man, who're getting older, this youthfulness will fade. So you're always going to be chasing something younger, which, you know, creates this Peter Pan effect of always wanting something newer, something shinier. But it also, the problem is when you're an older man, you've matured, and you're going after these younger women, is that these women's energy is very intoxicating, right? Because it's very innocent, but it's also very flighty. It's also very high on a short attention span. You know, any man who's listened to this and you've been to a club and you've met a group of 18-year-old girls, they're like children. You know, they can't put their attention on anything. They don't really know what they want. They don't know really about, you know, it's that sort of thing. And it's one of the reasons why through my years, I've never really dated women that are substantially younger than me, because there's been a huge turn off for me is that, and not all people who are young have this mentality. I'm generalizing, right? But this mentality that there's been a lack of maturity, emotional maturity, values maturity, like what's of value in life. And it's why I think when you go to clubs that do this whole table system shit, you know, like West End places, where it's like a group of older men, and then it's like, 22, 23-year-old women that are going over there hanging out with them, because really those girls just want a free night and a drink, and those older men are still idolizing youth. So, but I'm going to do that in another episode. I'm probably get a wonderful guest to talk about that. Another one is like not feeling good enough. So this is where men or women are hot and cold, not feeling that they're good enough. Because if you don't feel like you're good enough for the person you're talking to, or you're with, or you're dating, if they find this out, that you're not good enough, then all will crumble, right? So you're going to back off. And this, again, it's similar to some of the other ones. But it's just like, it creates this push-pull thing. And, you know, another one I'm thinking of, sorry, this is kind of coming to me as I sit here, is around, again, this is a maturity one. A few of these, as you probably see, a lot of these around maturity, right? Along about how we mature out of boyhood into a manhood, is this fear of that something better will come along. And I've been there. I've been in this one a lot in the past. There's like, okay, this girl's really nice. This woman's really nice. But maybe something better is going to come along just around the corner. I just don't know. So let me not really commit, right, all my energy into this, because something better might come along. And I don't want to lead her on too much, right? So it creates this hot and cold thing, which is a terrible one, right? Because there's, you know, I believe that you could always find something better on some level, but not on all levels. So like, I used to have this joke I'd say is like, me and a friend of mine used to say this: you can always find a hotter woman, always, right? You know, even I joke, because this was something when I was young, it's like, you know, even Puff Daddy probably looked at Jennifer Lopez and was like, there's hot women out there than Jennifer Lopez, right? You know, back in the day when they were together. And you can always find someone who's more attractive, or someone who is smarter, or someone who is more spiritual, or someone who is more awakened, or someone who is more grounded, whatever. But you might not find someone who's all of those things, right? And this is the idea I've talked about before, where we're looking for some sort of cyborg human being made up of the best traits of all the people we've met in the past, and that person doesn't exist. That's something we have to come to terms with. Like, you're not going to find someone who is the best parts of all the people you've met throughout your life. And waiting until you meet that person could mean that maybe your chance of having children goes, maybe your chance of, you know, living a great life with someone goes, because, you know, waiting for someone better, ready-made better, it might take a long time or never happen. Because I'm meeting a lot of men and women who had this idea of waiting someone better, and it doesn't happen for them. You know, maybe they're in their 40s and 50s, and they wanted to have children, they wanted to do things in their youth, they wanted to travel together, and they've left it too late, and maybe 10-15 years too late. So waiting for someone better can be a big problem, right? For all of us, men and women. And then the last point here about why this hot and cold thing happens is waiting for this certainty of like how, and this is a bit linked to, you know, wanting to meet the right or wrong woman, is like this certainty that this is the one. When I know this person is the one, there'll be a sign. And the problem here is that you oscillate between certainty and uncertainty. And every time you oscillate between certainty and uncertainty, energetically will change how you treat the person, and it will come through, right? And then you get this hot and cold. You get this back off, on and off, on and off. So those are the reasons why it happens. Now I'm going to talk about remedies for someone who is doing the hot and cold. If you're listening to this and this is you, then these are some things that can help you. And if you're listening to this as someone who, you know, often meeting partners who are hot and cold, I've got a little bit for you at the end about how you can deal with this. But equally, this might be a good time for you to send this to a man or a woman that you've met in the past who did this to you. And it might seem harsh to send this to them, to help them, right? But actually, you could save lots of other people pain that could come from them. Because if they receive this podcast and listen to it and realize the error of their ways and realize the ways to mature out of it, they potentially will stop doing it. Not guaranteed, but potentially will stop doing it. So you can give them a gift of helping them through their lives and all the many other people they will come into contact with. But I will leave that up to you. So to remedy this hot and cold thing, one of the first things you have to do is treat other human beings as powerful beings in their own right. Powerful, capable, and creative human beings, right? Because if you, and this is something that I used to kind of look at people as like, okay, they're, you know, I need to treat them with like porcelain dolls. A lot of men treat women like this. Oh, I need to, you know, look after them. They're fragile and so forth. You know, some of this was my upbringing, being told you should look after women all the time. You look at people as powerful human beings who can take the truth, who can take you saying what it is you want to say, you know, and not having to hide what needs to be said, right? So it's a big one. If we start to all treat each other like powerful human beings who can take truth, right, take hard information, we treat each other very differently. We'd have a lot more straight talking world. And obviously inside this is like straight communication. You know, maybe saying to someone, hey, I don't really think this could go anywhere. Like, it's nice to hang out, but, you know, I just think it's going to be this. You know, maybe something casual or maybe not anything at all. And just say that. Or even to say to someone, hey, I'm not really sure about where I think that this is going. You know, like I know sometimes we don't tell people these things because we don't want to crush them. But what's more crushing is messing them around, to be honest. And like, again, I put my hand on my heart, literally my hand on my heart, and I've done this. You know, I'm really sorry for the times I've done this. So many times I wasn't thinking past me. And I think that's a big part of this, right? For a lot of us, when we do things that hurt other people, it's not we're being, like I said before, we're not being malicious. We are just not thinking past our own thoughts, feelings, and needs in those moments. And we're not even thinking very deep into those, to be honest. We're just being quite shallow about those, right? It's a bit like when you get into an argument and you're not an argument, a discussion with a partner, and you get triggered, right? And all you can do is think, what does this mean about me? What does this mean about me? What does this mean about me? What are they saying about me? They're angry at me. You make it all about you. And I think it's the same. I feel like it's really the same inside of these areas, relationaries. Like, we just think about ourselves. We stop thinking about there's another human being with thoughts and feelings and pain and trauma and all those things and how it's going to affect them. So treat people as powerful human beings. Another remedy is to admit your fear to yourself. Admit your fear. Maybe there's a fear of intimacy you have. Maybe there's a fear of being close. Maybe it's a fear of choosing the wrong person and all those things. Admit the fear to yourself instead of letting it kind of be disguised as something else. Because ultimately there's some fear that you have in there. So just admit it to yourself. Be like, I'm afraid of this thing. Okay. And then know that your fear doesn't preclude you from getting what you actually really want and actually really love. You can be afraid and still get what you want. You know, you can be afraid and still go after what you want as well. Like, you know, you can imagine any child, and I'm going to really simple. Any child who's had to ride a bicycle, at one point, they're afraid of falling off the bicycle. But what they would really love is to ride the bicycle really well. So they try and ride the bicycle, and yeah, sometimes they fall off. Sometimes the thing they're afraid of happens. But through effort and concentration and consciousness, they're able to ride the bike. And that's a bit like, relationships. It's not necessarily going to go perfectly the first time. Sometimes it takes a bit of time. So just know that your fear doesn't have to stop you. It's a really important point, because sometimes our fear tells us that it's impossible. And this is where, the coaching that I do becomes really useful, is that, people, we get these ideas into our head that, we can't do certain things. It's impossible because of this fear. There's so many obstacles. And when we just have someone else who starts reflecting back what we're thinking, reflecting back what we're doing, we see our behavior, we hear our behavior, and we go, fuck, what the fuck am I doing? That makes no sense. So, like I said, admit your fear. Honor and another point here about remedying this is like honor and respecting the people you're with. Like, I know it's very similar to treating them as powerful, but honor and respect them, like, as individuals, as people with feelings and, hearts and all those kind of couple good things. Because when we forget that, as I've mentioned, it's like we can treat people like objects. We can become quite callous of other people's emotions and feelings. So it's like continue to connect with compassion, connect with another human being as a human being, and, going through certain things. And then I think the next one for me is around letting go of your fears. Like seeing them again, letting go, just going, okay, there's that fear there, let go. Let's move on. Let's keep going. Be honest. Maybe you have a fear of being honest. Maybe a bit of a nice guy, like the episode I did with Dr. Robert Glover. You're a bit of a nice guy. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and that makes you go hot and cold, right? Put that fear about not being liked or being judged to one side and tell the truth and be straight, right? Maybe in the moments of being straight, it's going to hurt someone, but in the long term, at least people know where they stand with you. And I think we all need a bit more of that. This next point is quite blanket, but I think what the thing is growing up emotionally. And this is a big part of this, right? Because where we're allowing ourselves to go hot and cold is because actually what's happening is we're letting our day-to-day, moment by moment emotions dictate our actions a lot, right? It's like, oh, this person seems cool. Oh, this person doesn't seem that cool. Those are moment-to-moment reactions emotionally, instead of being more connected to our highest goal, our highest, focus or intention or what we want. Maybe you want a loving, connected relationship, right? That is your highest goal, but you're getting buffeted from side to side from this fear of not being good enough, fear of being, rejected or abandoned, or this, thinking this person's great. And when you're being buffeted by all those emotions, you're not focused on your higher ideal, your higher goal inside your relationship. Like, even inside my relationship now with Orsa, like there are times where I can be a bit hot and cold. I withdraw. It's kind of my default way of being. And I have to be like, what is my highest goal in this relationship? Is it to be in my fear and concerns and worries, or is it to be connected to, this deep and meaningful partnership I'm creating? Oh shit, it's a deep and meaningful partnership I'm creating. Let me connect back to that. What action does that tell me to take? That tells me to go and tell how I'm feeling, or what I need right now, or what I don't need right now, but to be in communication, or to go and be close. Sometimes it's just to go and, give someone a hug, say, hey, what's up? So growing up emotionally is like starting to connect to your emotions more, admit what you're feeling, discuss what you're feeling. Or as a thing that I've been listening to recently by, the man who I have deep reverence for, John Wineland, is about shepherding your own emotions, creating a container where you can express those safely and be with those in a safe place. Maybe that's a men's group. Maybe that's, screaming into a pillow, whatever it is, like creating a safe container for you to feel your emotions, and not just bury them. Like, and again, there's something, like a lot of work I do within my coaching is around that. And I think another remedy is seeing and hearing the impact of your choices and how that affects people. That's one of the things that we try and avoid, is like, if someone does tell us how this hot and cold way of being is affecting them, we kind of just like push it to one side and pretend it's not happening. But stay deeply present and listen. And even listen to your friends and say, hey, you know, when you hear them talking about how it felt when someone was really hot and cold on and off with them, and be like, shit, this is what you're doing. So when you start hearing it, you're like, that's what happens. And even better is to experience it. Because when you've experienced the hot and cold and you know how horrible it feels for you, you know, how it was for me is it kicked me into being like, I don't want to do that to people, right? I don't want to be like that. Which also can go the way for some people as like, oh, well, everyone's like this, so it's fine to do it. And just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean it's fine to do. You can take a step higher, you know, and be better, right? And be more evolved than everybody else. You know what I mean? If everyone is sending nudes on Snapchat and that isn't your thing, you don't have to conform. You just go, I'm not doing that. I'm going to send a tasteful, beautiful, artistic pictures or whatever your thing is, right? So it's like, understand what kind of other people go through. Yeah, what else is there? I think the last point on this remedy is connecting to your heart, actually. Connecting to what you would really love and what you really matters to you and what you really care about. Instead of, again, these just like day by day fears. Because when you are always connected to your fears and your worries, you're not acting, you're just going to act from your fears and worries. You're just going to keep taking action from the fear and worry, which changes day to day, moment to moment. So you're always going to be kind of in that, oh, what should I do? I'm not sure. What should I do? Hot and cold. It creates that because you're just in the fear of worry, maybe the fear of someone getting too close, and then the fear of them leaving you, right? And it just creates this hot and cold instead of being truly connected continuously to what you would love. And that might be, what you might love might be not being with someone, right? Or not being with this person, or not being with someone like that. But if you stay there, you won't be getting hot and cold. You'll just be like, no, this isn't right. I think that's probably the last point in the remedy. Definitely. So I'm going to finish up, I'm going to round up in a second. Is going to be around, what do you do if you're with someone like this? What do you do if you're with someone who's like super hot and cold all the time? What do you do? And I feel like some of it's probably come through in the episode so far, but I think one of the best things is to tell them how you're feeling. And just be like, you know, you just be really clear. Like, hey, you're doing this thing, blah, blah, like, you know, hot and cold, like one day you want to see each other, then you don't, but I don't hear from you in between that, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not down with that. What it makes me feel is, the impact it has on me is, and just say that, and just leave that there, like, almost with the silence, just put it out there, and then just listen to what comes back. Because obviously you can, you know, people say things, oh, you know, but I was busy and I was doing this and I was doing that. But ultimately what you have to really listen for is their actions afterwards. Because, you know, when you've made it clear how it makes you feel, if it's upsetting or whatever it may be for you, right? After that is the action. Change of action or no action. One of the two happens. And this will lead on to, you know, my next thing is choosing to like walk away. Just walk away. If it's not serving you, just walk away. I think too often people don't do this. We don't walk away when the behavior isn't, you know, going the way you want it to be. And obviously there's times where people will be a bit hot and cold and they have their real reasons, right? They have like, maybe they are mad busy at work sometimes, or maybe they've had some serious things happen in their life. But, you know, you have to start attuning yourself to what's reasonable and not reasonable, and walk away. Like, if someone just keeps doing this, you know, there's definitely times where there's women in the past who, you know, they kind of put up with me doing this for a while, and then they were like, no, I'm not on this. Goodbye. Like, straight goodbye. I'm not speaking to you anymore. And then even when I kind of tried to get in contact, they'd be like, no reply. And that taught me, like, oh shit, I can't do that with this person. And, you know, that's that. And I think that's actually a perfectly reasonable thing to do until that person matures into a place where they can be consistent, right? And this is an aspect of maturity, is consistency, is being consistent with our energy with people. It's part of maturing, is being consistent, right? Setting clear understanding and boundaries about how we're going to be, right? Like, hey, I'm going to be really busy next week because I've got X, Y, and Z going on work. so you might not hear from me. That's maturity, right? Not just disappearing for a week. That's not maturity. Because even in the middle of that busy time, right, where someone's busy, you can just pop a message and go, hey, look, 2-liner. Hey, really sorry you haven't heard from me. Super busy with work, but I should be better. Things will be better in a few days or whatever. Right? Again, there's a maturity of thinking about the other person. And if you'll find yourselves with people who are continually immature, that doesn't work for you. There's 2 things to do. 1, mature yourself. What is it about that person? What is about that person's immature behavior that's attractive to you? Maybe it's the spontaneity, maybe it's the playfulness, whatever. It's like, why does that attract you? Why does the immaturity in them attract you? Where are you immature in your life? And start to raise your level, raise your maturity in that area. Because this is a big thing for us. Like, whatever's in other people, there's something in them you're searching for in yourself, right? Like I always say, look at yourself first. I do this with all my coaching clients. I do it with all the people here. Look at yourself. Look at yourself first. And then the last point inside of this bit, how you can deal with someone who's being hot and cold, is to call them forward for better behavior. It's like, make it clear, like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. And say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Like I said before, consistency. Hey, I'm looking for someone who can communicate when they're struggling with their fear. It's okay. I will accept you. Just communicate it. I'd like you to. Can you do that? It's something as straight as that. Or what I'd really like is that. Because if it's happening and you don't say anything, then hey, someone doesn't even know they're doing it. So just be upfront, call it out, ask for better. Ask for better from people, because you give them an opportunity to be better, especially if you can give them an idea about what that looks like. Because sometimes people don't even realize, they're so caught up in their subconscious drama, they don't even realize how it's impacting people. So you can call people forward, not call people out, because calling people out leaves people feeling shame and guilt and other heavier emotions. You want to call people forward, create a compelling future for them or to them, and be like, something like, hey, if you can create this consistency of being together, we could have this amazing future. We could have do these amazing fun things. You could be this sort of person. Create a compelling future for people. See if they want to live into that future. If they don't, then cool. You create a compelling future with a healthy detachment, because people will change their mind and go, hey, no, I don't want that. It doesn't have to be forceful. And again, people's actions speak. And it's not about you if they don't take the action. It's not about you. It's not about whether you're good enough or worthy. It's just where they're at and what they're capable of in that moment. People are always trying to do their best, but sometimes, their best is limited by their level of maturity, their level of emotional ability, emotional awareness, intelligence. But people are doing their best. So you can create a compelling future for people to live into. So that's it. That's it for this week. That's the episode, talking about that kind of whole push-pull, why people do it, what it looks like. A lot of the why is just fear. It's like levels of fear, levels of belief about oneself. And the remedies, and not the remedies is actually just, connecting to one's own heart and one's own ability to care, but also the remedies are a lot about connecting to the other person as a human being with thoughts and feelings and ideas and a life. Because when we do that, we can treat each other as human beings, not as just objects for our own play. And then what to do with someone like this. Speak about it, communicate. Something we don't do very well is like, hey, what the fuck's going on? Not like that necessarily, but actually talk about it. Say you want something different. In my relationship also does it to me all the time. Don't do that. I don't like it when you do that. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I'm doing that thing. Because sometimes we just don't realize how it's impacting other people. So, have the communication, learn to have those conversations and so forth. Learn to be authentic with your needs and your wants. This is something people are coming to me a lot at the moment with. It's wanting to be able to express themselves authentically. And it's you got to know what you want. You got to know what you need and what you desire as well inside of that, which is, work in itself. So come to an end today. Thank you for listening. If you really enjoyed it, again, I says again, you know, rate, review, subscribe's amazing. Again, if you can share this with one person, a friend, a family member, an ex-boyfriend, an ex-lover, a man you once went on a date with that was terrible, or a woman you once went on a date with that was terrible, please do. And also, if any of these topics are things that you'd like some help and coaching around, please get in contact with me at @theauthenticman_ on Instagram, or hello@theauthenticman.net. That should all be in the show notes as well below. You can just click through and find me. But until next week, ciao, ciao for now.